You're listening to Outrageous Love, the podcast. If you work in education and would like to share your journey to responsiveness, consider being a guest on our show. Send us an email at info@culturallyresponsive.org to get connected.
Right. So, like, did I experience discrimination? Like, certainly not at the way Black people do. I could because I show up looking a certain way.
Right,
But
right,
yeah, when
right,
people hear that you're Italian and like, there's
right.
no question like that. And
That right.
in the Italian culture, I'm from the South. Like that, even with Italians, like the language that I heard in my house is like my mother would say, "Oh, we don't speak high Italian, like Roman Italian, like the kind of Italian you would learn in school." And
Right,
I
right.
definitely notice that when I go to Italy and Sicily specifically, like there's so even within the Italian culture, Sicilians are like the workhorses, like, and not to mention the stereotypes about mafioso, la familia, like that kind of stuff as well. So, I,
I was gonna go
yeah,
there. I
yeah,
was gonna like that. Right, right, right,
yeah.
right, right, right.
From the Center for Culturally Responsive Teaching and Learning, it's the Outrageous Love podcast with your fabulous host, Dr. Shiraki Holly.
Welcome to Outrageous Love, the podcast, the official first video version. Glad to be with you. If you can't beat them, join them. So we are introducing our podcast via video for our 7th season and the annual Dr. Holly's personal episode. In case you haven't seen me in person, I'm Dr. Holly, Shiraki Holly. Glad to be able to see you, for you to see me. This is our very first time doing this, so we're a little anxious, a little nervous. Let's make sure this is going to all work out. But we're also super excited for the opportunity because this is something that we've been told to do for a couple of years now. People said, "Why don't you do the video? Why don't you do the video?" So here we go, folks. So this is Outrageous Love, the podcast, and we're starting our 7th season. And the way, for those of you who are new to the podcast, it is really just a series of interviews with awesome educators who are telling their journeys to responsiveness. And I started the very first episode in 2020 during the COVID, sequester. And I started with my journey. So you can go all the way back to episode number 1, and you can hear that. And ever since then, we've been rolling. We just do one episode a month. So we are fairly young podcast, if you really look at it. This is only like our 70th episode total. So from what I understand from the podcast experts, that's pretty young. You have to get up into the hundreds and like 200s to be considered like a seasoned podcast. So I'm happy about that part. But we only do one episode a month. We feature an educator. They come on, they tell their journeys to responsiveness. And we try to get inspired. We try to get insight. We try to, just get informed by, these great educators all across the country, from, Minnesota, from New Mexico, from New York, just all over, from state of Washington. And so that's the crux of now, in between all that, I always do an intro. And with our intro, we always start with affirming ourselves. And you can see some of these affirmations on our YouTube page at Validate Affirm. But I just want to set the tone for the work, no matter where we are and what we're doing. So we're going to start that. We're going to do the affirmations. So I want you to tell your faces that you're happy. Yay, right? Tell your faces that you're happy. And that's just meant to say that no matter what's going on, we know it's all going to work out, right? And so we have to kind of promote ourselves that way and come with that energy of just, love and peace. And so we do that by simple gestures. The simplest of them all is a smile. So wherever you are, look up and tell your face that you're happy. Look around the room, smile at somebody, even if it's a stranger, but maybe not if it's like a, creepy stranger. I don't know. But It's just your way of saying, hey, I'm going through something, but today is going to be a good day. The second affirmation is that we show ourselves some love, right? We give ourselves some props, if you will. So I just want you to, if you're in a mirror, we're going to do one that goes back that I actually got from Usher, where he talked about every day, he looks in the mirror and says, I love me some me. So I want you to do that wherever you are. If you're in a mirror, though, that's the key. Just look at that mirror and say, ooh, I love me some me, because I'm all that. I'm special. I'm unique. I'm awesome. So just give yourself some love. And so I'm looking into the camera. I love me some me. And that's important that we affirm ourselves. And there are a lot of different reasons. One of the reasons why I like, especially when we're working with students, is students have to love themselves, because they are going through an institution, they're going through a system that may not show them love. And so when no one else is going to show you love, what you got to do, you got to love yourself. And so that's why these affirmations of self-love are very important. And the last affirmation is to show love to other folks. And I just want you to reach out to someone that you can say, I love you, right? And I'm not necessarily, we're not trying to get too personal or whatever, but just to send the message that we do this work in love, right? So that's the message I want you to send to somebody. Not necessarily just like write an email to a colleague and say, I love you, because that may not go over so well. But just send a message to someone that we do this work, we do this advocacy, we do this fight in love, right? And we do it for the underserved, we do it for our students, we do it for our parents, our community. And just say, I'm in it with you. I'm in it with you. Okay? All right. So if you go back and listen to all our podcasts, we always start off with 3 affirmations. I try to mix them up, but if you want to see it live with a real audience, go to our YouTube page. The next part of the podcast is I give what we call, what's been dubbed Dr. Holly's 2 cents. Don't get it twisted.
Dr. Holly's 2 cents. Here's what I've been thinking.
Listen up. This is just my little perspective, my little, kind of whatever going on, me kind of riffing on something. And I just wanted to tie in that, every opening season episode is a personal episode. And so I've brought on, one of my children. I brought on lifelong friends. I brought on my master teachers who taught me when I was a first year teacher. And so it's always like a personal episode. And this episode, I'm bringing on a colleague that I went to doctoral school, or when I went to graduate school with. Her name is Marva Cappello. And we've been rocking as friends, as colleagues, since we were both in the PhD program at USC long ago, right? I won't tell you the time because that's going to come out in our interview with Marva. And so this personal episode is I'm going to speak Dr. Holly's 2 cents. I'm going to speak to something personal, and that is, how I came about my PhD and the work that I did, since Marva is so closely connected to that. And what I want to let you know is that we're based in Los Angeles, and I had always wanted to go to USC. Just home kid. Marcus Allen was a running back in my younger day, and I actually, coming out of high school, I applied to go to USC as well as other schools, and actually got in, but it was probationary. And I went to my high school counselor and said, "Yo," his name was Mr. Jackson, African American. And I said, I have some choices, right? I had gotten into Cal State. I pretty much got into wherever I wanted to go. I applied to Howard, but I knew that I didn't want to leave Southern California because I'm a single. I'm a product of a single parent household and an only child, no siblings. And my mom was ill. She was sickly. And so I knew that I couldn't leave her. I couldn't go all the way across the country. So I got into USC, but it was probationary. And the criteria was basically you must, maintain a certain GPA, or basically show that your worth is. And so I went to Mr. Jackson, And he told me, he said, you probably could go to USC and you'll be okay. But if you go to one of the Cal States, you're gonna excel. You're gonna do very, very well. And then if you want, you could transfer over to USC. And I didn't know how to take that advice at the time, right? Because we have those classic counselor stories where the counselor's trying to like keep you down or say, you shouldn't go to college. You should not, you should go vocational or whatever, right? We've all heard those horror stories. And I wasn't sure, even though I trusted Mr. Jackson, like I said, he was African American, but I wasn't sure. But long story short, and maybe too late is already a long story, but long story short, I ended up going to Cal State Northridge. And Mr. Jackson was right. I did very, very well at Cal State Northridge. And that's another podcast in itself. I excelled, outstanding senior. I graduated cum laude, blah, 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 right? Went on from there to get my master's, which eventually led me back to USC. Because as I was trying to decide on a doctoral program, once again, I was faced with the option of leaving Southern California. But I knew in my heart that I really wanted to go to USC. It's just been something I wanted to do just as a neighborhood kid. And so I chose USC. I applied, and I would say it was an affirmative action admission, but I ain't mad. I ain't mad at affirmative action. And I remember the day I was in the office of who would become my advisor at the time. His name is Dr. David Marsh. Shout out to Dr. David Marsh. Totally cool, great professor. It wasn't everybody's favorite, but he was cool with me. I learned a lot from him about professional development of teachers, which totally influences my work even to this day. So again, longer story long, Dr. Marsh basically said, listen, we need you. We need you, just like you want to be here with us, but you should look at it as we need you. And that was kind of like a wink, wink, right? And so I appreciated him telling me that because they did need me, right? I was one of two African American men in the doctoral program at that time, and the second guy, he ended up not finishing. So I was literally the only African American in my cohort, in my group, and I knew even then at that time what that meant and what was the significance of that and how important it was for me to finish my doctoral. Now, I'm saying in my specific program, because you have all these different programs, there were other African Americans throughout the doctoral, school, but in my particular focus, I was the only African American. And so that's where I met Marva. Marva was in the same program, not the exact same cohort, but the same program that I was in. So we took classes together, studied together, and do all those things. And so I'm forever grateful to USC, and it really let me know the importance of diversity because I was representative of a different voice in all my classes. Even though, people would look at me and say, "Hey, Shraki, what do the black people say?" But I was totally cool. I was totally cool with it, right? I was totally cool with it. And again, folks, we're talking like late '90s here, early 2000s. So it's just a different time, right? So that's my USC story. That's that's kind of my origin story in terms of my doctoral studies. And it leads us right into our guests. Now, there's a bonus part to this because we also are doing a theme, and I hope you listened to last month's episode. The theme for 3 episodes, and this is the second, is Don't Call Me White, Call Me Blank. And what we're exploring is people who are racially Caucasian, which are macro society terms white, which is, if you listen to my opener for last month's episode, I explain all of that. So please go back and listen to it. I'm not going to do it now because I already spent too much time. But what we're exploring is people who are Caucasian racially, but don't identify with quote unquote whiteness culturally. They identify with their sort of ethnic identity and just that whole dynamic, because it fits with our overall philosophy of that whatever you are racially does not mean you're automatically that ethnically, but our society makes that assumption, right? So I'm African racially, but that does not mean that I ethnically subscribe to what I would call blackness in our work, right? In terms of my cultural norms, mores, so on and so forth, right? Society makes that assumption. We make that assumption all the time. But what we don't talk about enough, in my opinion, is we make the same assumption when it comes to Caucasians, right? And so what I like to do is parse out, and whenever I meet someone who is Caucasian, but they don't subscribe to quote unquote whiteness culturally, it's fascinating for me. I met a gentleman recently in New Mexico who was Caucasian, but subscribes to Slavic cultures, right? And he let us know, right? That's very fascinating to me. So I'm trying to explore that, and how has that been? What's the experience of educators who kind of walk this nuanced line? And so Marva is of that. So I don't call her white. I call her Sicilian. And this has been from day one. So this goes back to the beginning of our friendship. We've had this discussion. And so it's amazing. It's a blessing to bring it full circle and just be able to talk about it now. And so with that said, and that, by the way, I do want to point out I have resources, and I'll talk about those resources when we culminate the theme next month. But I'm mainly using a text called "The Invention of White People" by I want to say Alexander. I don't have the reference right in front of me, and so it's a 2-volume book that talks about how this notion of whiteness has been all invented and created mainly for social and political reasons, right? And maybe I'll explore a little bit that next time, but I want to keep it focused on the personal episode. So I'm going to bring our guest, who is personally my friend for almost 30 years, a colleague in the academic world in terms of being university professors, and also a fellow classmate as we matriculated through the USC doctoral program together, graduated together long ago. So with that said, let me introduce you to Marva Cappello, PhD, is a professor of literacy education at San Diego State University, where she teaches master's levels courses in literacy, as well as doctoral courses in creative qualitative research methods. Dr. Cappello is the director and founder of the Center for Literacy's CVL, which focuses on visual-based methods as equitable and inclusive practice for literacy pedagogy and qualitative research. Her awards include the Alumni Association Award for Outstanding Faculty Contributions to the University for 2024 and 2025, the highest recognition awarded at San Diego State University. Dr. Cappello's research has been widely disseminated. Recent studies have been published in Departures in Critical Qualitative Research Journal and Research in the Teaching of English. Her latest edited book, The Seen and the Unseen, Critical Visual Methods to Advance Racial Justice in Educational Research, published by Routledge, was chosen as AERA's Semiotics in Education SIG Outstanding Book of the Year 2026. Wow, I didn't even know that. I just read that. I didn't even know that. Yep. In other words, Marva, especially when it comes to the academics, she is all in on the research, folks, and the research for equitable causes around social justice and equity. She's a bad mofo. Let's bring on my friend, my colleague, and my classmate, Marva Cappello. Welcome to the podcast, Marva. So glad to have you here.
Hi, Shiraki. How are you?
I'm good. So you already know this is my personal episode, which I do annually. So I want to start there because you have known me for 25 years,
More.
right?
More. No, come on now. How long has it been?
Since 97, 29
All right.
years, almost
29
30
years. Oh
years.
my God.
I know.
That's unbelievable. We were kids at USC,
Hmm.
and I already told the people that my USC story, which led to getting meeting you and knowing you. Man, I thought it was closer to 25. That makes me feel old.
Me too. Yeah.
So over 29 years, you probably could say a lot, but I always like to start off with this episode by having my guests share something personal about me that you think people may or may not know or would be surprised to know.
I mean, I'm not sure people would be surprised to know this, but what I would share is how generous you are, that your generosity of thought and your generosity of like development, because I think you really played a key role in my early development of understanding. We would have readings and be in class, and then you and I would spend like an hour or more after class debriefing everything together. So when I was working through stuff, and I hope that I served as a sounding board for you too, but you just were really generous with your time and understanding and helping me learn to make meaning. And I really appreciate that. Those are some of my best memories of grad school, to be honest, like not in the classroom, in the ways that we figured stuff out together. So
Yeah, totally, totally. Thank you. I wouldn't have expected you to say that. It's funny. Like people are tuning in because they want something like
I
juicy and like,
have
oh,
juicy, but I don't know if I should share. I have plenty of juicy. I mean, we go
no,
back,
no, no, no,
so like, yeah.
no, no, no. Don't share it. Don't share it. Don't share it. I like the generosity one. No, right. But you're right. I mean, um, I think we connected in a good way based on the fact that we both needed whatever that was at the time. What I expressed when I talked about my USC story, Marva, is that I did feel out of place as like the only African
Hmm.
American male, at the time. And, even though I never felt anything, around in terms of like race or anything, it was more of a self-conscious piece. And one of the reasons why I leaned on you, which is very interesting, was the connection culturally, right?
Hmm.
And learning that you were like authentically Italian,
Sicilian.
uh, Sicilian, right? You're gonna break that down for it. That was always like appealing. That always appealed to
Hmm.
me, even though I think you may not have seen it in the same way that I saw it.
Hmm.
But those it wasn't even so much about the academic stuff, which was like you said, that was cool. But for me, it was more about the sort of personal cultural stuff, where we were connecting that I remember in terms of grad school.
Well, and that too. I mean, we were making meaning about a lot of stuff during those days, right? We both were in a
Right.
certain life place, and it wasn't just the academic text that we were working through for sure. But I am a little
Right.
surprised to hear you say you didn't have some kind of feeling, because I remember a really important kind of school memory is reading Their Eyes Were Watching God alongside you, and to have like the professor that chose that book, like for us to be in small groups around it, like yeah. So I'm surprised for you to say you didn't feel a certain something at that time at school, because I feel like you were kind of burdened with representing blackness when you were the only black
Right.
person in the situation, right? So
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but I understood. You know what I mean? Like
I
it's
guess
kind of
been there
like
before, right?
before. Yeah. Yeah. You get used
Hmm.
to it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I mean, so in fact, actually, are you talking about McGillivray?
Yeah.
She would be right. That would be the She would be the one to do that. I actually saw her on a flight. I don't know if I told you
Mm-mm.
that. Yeah,
Is
I
this
saw her
gonna
on.
be
I
in
was
the,
on a.
should we edit this out? But yeah.
No, no, no. I'm leaving it. I'm leaving it right there. I'm leaving it right there.
Okay.
I'm just saying, like we connected.
Hmm.
Like I was on a connecting flight, and she was coming down the aisleway, and she said, "Are you Shiraki?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So it's just funny. It's just funny that you had mentioned
Hmm.
that, and I saw her like this happened. I don't know when, but anyway. So well, I appreciate you sharing that. I'll see how people respond. I don't think people. You're right. I don't think people will be surprised by the
Hmm.
generosity part. Yeah, but I'm glad that you reinforced that. Now let's go to my whole thing around, don't call me white, call me blank. And I know you would never say it, um, but I know it's part of the thought process. So kind of talk about how you've navigated being, Sicilian in a quote unquote white world.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, for sure, being Sicilian is centers my identity, no question. And also growing up, I think around a lot of immigrants, and at a certain time, I'm a bit older than you, where there was a tension between like blending in and being American, and then also like later in life saying like, wait a second, that's not working for me. Like, let me celebrate these cultural highlights that like I don't want to blend in, but yeah, I mean, I'm definitely white. I just don't have like my culture doesn't celebrate whiteness. I feel like I'm definitely first gen Sicilian. I go to Sicily every few years and I feel more at home there in a lot of ways, and um yeah, I guess I'm like adjacent. I get invited to the cookout. But I mean, I'm definitely white. I mean, this is how I show up in the world. This is how, it's my race. It's my essentialized identity that I put a check mark next to, you know. But
Right, right,
it's
right, right. Well, I think it's important for people to understand the history in terms of you saying first
hmm.
generation. And our previous guest, Carrie, she did a really good job of explaining like her sort of Italian
Hmm.
heritage, especially being from, she's from Southern California, which a lot of people wouldn't associate that type of heritage with Southern
Right.
California. You're more, yours is more what we would consider New
For
York based,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up with a lot of Italian people and a lot of Sicilian people, and so I think there was easily having an identity that's reinforced. But the place that I grew up was filled with first gen, low socioeconomic. My high school did not target us to go to college. I mean, there's definitely not a lot of PhDs from the place that I graduated with. And in fact, my core peer group of women, I'm the only one that did a 4 year degree from
Mm.
that group. But just the way I think we live life. And also, I would say, as a Sicilian woman, there's like that perception of strength and getting through and, perseverance and all of that stuff that I definitely has played a role. And I think in more general sense, like being Italian, there's some even kind of type of top of the iceberg kind of superficialities that I can't separate out, like my tie to family, like super strong, or like the ways that we are fiercely protective. We have this like comadre, like a loyalty, like that women in Sicilian women are fiercely protective, and I feel that whole thing growing up was that way. But in terms of being first gen, also being first gen to go to school, first gen in the United States on my mom from my mom, but also first gen to go to school, like I didn't have any help. In fact, my college counselor was like, "Yeah, don't even apply. Like you're from this school, no one's gonna take you at a prestigious university or any kind of school at all." We were tracked at best for a community college, but mostly for the vocations. So but my parents were like, "Nope, you're going to school." And also, to
Mm.
my father's great credit, he was like, I don't care what you study. You just need the college experience. And so I have a BFA in photography, you know? I mean,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's another fascinating thing. That's another way we connected. And I always remind you of that great picture you took of me.
Hmm.
What, 28 years ago,
Yeah.
20 whatever, right? I still have it.
Oh,
It's really
oh, I
cool.
love that.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so let me ask you this. This is where it gets a little more nuanced. Talk about times where you recognize the assimilation
Hmm.
that was necessary into whiteness, considering that you were Sicilian. And I guess I am going back to like those K-12, those K-12 school years.
Hmm.
Like, was there a moment where you recognized where there was a separation between being Sicilian and being quote unquote WAS?
Wow. Um, yes. I don't think I've thought about this before, but I mentioned earlier we were like kind of tracked for the vocation. And so my senior year, I had finished all of my requirements for a Regents. It was called a Regents diploma at that time, except I think I needed PE. So for my most of my senior year, I spent at a vocational school to do photography. And it's there I met people that weren't from my hometown, Central Islip, CI. And that's when I was like, wait, what? Like, you don't have riots in your school? Like, because we had a lot of racial tension in my school, a
Mm,
lot. It was
mm,
about, I would say, 50% white, and the other 50% a combination of like Puerto Rican and black folks. And, despite growing up in that situation, I found ways to grow up with a lot of different people. But there was some hiding. Oh, like you couldn't date that guy in school, or you couldn't do that. There was some of that. So it wasn't until I got to that vocational situation where I met people from like white towns, that were like, I was like, wait, what do you mean? Like I had no idea that there's something different, because you don't know what you don't know. And so
right,
growing up
right.
in my town, you know, in order to get to college or to get out of my town, there was definitely assimilation. The other thing I would say is it happened, I think, also a little later in life. I met my ex-husband when I was a freshman at college. And one thing he taught me, we're still good friends, is that like observe your situation. So I ended up in places where I never thought I would be. He's a motion picture cameraman. And I would be in these situations like not knowing how to act, not knowing what to do. And being an observer, I think really was super helpful for me in terms of like that assimilating to whiteness, and also assimilating to a different economic class, and those kinds of things. That
Right, right,
yeah. But growing
right.
up, you don't know what you don't know, you know?
No, no, no. Sure. But I think that the sooner you know, then it puts you on a certain trek of how to think
Mm-hmm.
about, situational appropriateness, if you
Yep.
will. I think, which is going to come up a little later. But what I'm trying to tease out for folks is that there's an assumption that because you are, and I'm going to go ahead and use the term
Uh-huh.
Caucasian, that you may not experience some things culturally that people of color experience because of their race
Okay.
and
Yeah.
culture,
Right. So like,
right?
did I experience discrimination? Like, certainly not at the way black people do. I could, because I show up looking a certain way.
Right,
But
right,
yeah, when
right,
people hear that you're Italian, and like there's
right.
no question like that. And
That right,
in the Italian culture, I'm from the South. Like that, even with Italians, like the language that I heard in my house is like my mother would say, "Oh, we don't speak high Italian, like Roman Italian, like the kind of Italian you would learn in school." And
right,
I
right.
definitely notice that when I go to Italy and Sicily specifically. Like there's so even within the Italian culture, Sicilians are like the workhorses, like looked, you know, and not to mention the stereotypes about mafioso, la familia, like that kind of stuff as well. So I,
I was gonna go
yeah,
there. I was
yeah,
gonna like that. Right, right, right,
yeah.
right, 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 right. Um, Oh, right. Okay. So because I think that people make an assumption that because you're Caucasian, you don't experience that. Certainly, it's different, but I am intentionally
Mm-hmm.
trying to draw a line between race and culture.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the basis of our work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that if you are Sicilian or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, right, that there is a sort of notion of you can empathize.
I mean, people I
Um,
think of
to
me
some
as
extent.
less than, you know what I mean? Like there's definitely
Right,
a
right,
less, I mean, I don't care. Like let me prove them wrong. And also there's a lot of privilege of showing up like this too, right? Like,
right, right,
and
right,
especially, you know, you've known me a long time. I used to have a very thick New York accent. And so
right,
to
right,
even
right.
just, and I had no idea till I moved to California that people thought New Yorkers sounded stupid. Like I had no idea about that.
Right,
And you know,
right.
that was my lived reality, you know, and yeah, and also, you know, I mentioned my ex-husband, but he's not only Sicilian but from the Bronx. So it was like very thick, you know, and right.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, all right, so last question in this regard is you mentioned privilege
Hmm.
a couple of times. Have there been blatant times where you feel like you've accessed your privilege
Oh
of
yeah.
being Caucasian? Um, yeah,
Without a
yeah.
doubt.
And how did and not having people like the Sicilian part doesn't enter into the equation. And how does that make you feel, or how did that like how do you process that?
I mean, I do it intentionally and strategically, if I'm being honest, because I, as the director of a doctoral program, we have, we're the most diverse department on the university, on the whole campus. And so it's my job to help traditionally minoritized folks be successful in the academy. And so if I have to show up a certain way to support my students, I don't care. I'm going to do what I need to do to help them. And it's been really interesting about like them helping them choose who's on their committee, right? I mean,
Right,
helping
right,
them choose who they're citing, like why aren't you citing this person and that person? And also even in terms of like looking for jobs, because a lot of, I'll just say our black students, but also we have Latinx students, we have Southeast Asian students, like Hmong students that, you know, it's like, find your community. Like these are, you need to be doing this. So yeah, I'll even intentionally do what I need to do to help my students be successful. And I hope that that's my legacy when I finish is that, you know, we've graduated. I mean, I don't know the statistics, but certainly on my campus at SDSU, we're known as the most diverse department on campus. So,
mm,
and I think part of that is because I know how to play the game. I've been at it a long time. Like I'm a workaround queen, you know, like I'm gonna make stuff happen. And
right,
and I do think that I can do that not only because of my longevity, but also because I'm white and I can show up in these spaces and people don't question me the way that they would question, you know, my students.
right,
Based on
right,
just the
right,
way they show up, just the way they look. Not even their like
right,
kind of internal positionality, but just on that kind of like ridiculous essentialized checklist. Like I have a student right
right.
now who's struggling because she's a Afro Latina Muslim who wears a hijab. So like,
Wow.
I mean, I think I don't know, you know, America's such a mess at this moment, but you know, I see that as an asset. Look, she walks into this room, she's bringing all of this, right? But now I think
Right,
like
right,
she has a lot to navigate every single day just
right.
walking into a room like that.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah. A lot of rings of
A
culture
lot of
going on
rings of
there.
culture. Yeah. And also
Yeah,
ones
yeah.
that you can see, right?
Right, right,
That
right, right.
and 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 we shouldn't hide those things. Like she should be
No, no.
celebrated for those
Should
things. Like
should be
it's
celebrated.
right.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, let me use your sort of advocacy to segue into your journey and have you talk about when did you realize very early
Hmm.
on that you were about social justice, you were about equity, you were about cultural responsiveness? And I really try to go pre-educator years.
Oh,
Like I
okay.
feel like everybody has a premonition, or like it's already in
Yeah.
us, and we recognize almost like a superpower that we recognize early on.
Hmm.
When did you recognize?
I definitely in my K-12 experience, like who it was very clear to see the differences in the way people were treated in my community. You know, the we
Mm,
even had I can't even imagine that this is legal, but this is the way it was back in the 70s, you know, but we had tracks. And so like
yeah.
there was I guess like over 600 students in my freshman class, but they picked 30 that were college bound and called it like the honors
Mm,
track. And it was
wow.
maybe one black person in that whole group. And then it was like high regions, like 5 levels. And, you know, complexions got darker the way it went down.
Really?
So
Yeah. Yeah.
probably in those early days, because I recognized the brilliance in my peers, you know, like I had this very kind friend. His nickname was Tree because he was like this giant guy. And like sometimes we would have like it's not gangs the way you talk about gangs today, but we would have like issues with the neighboring town. It's called Brentwood, not like Brentwood in LA at all, but and like they would say, "Oh, so and so is going to come and jump you." And he would like walk me to classes and just talk with
Oh,
me
wow.
and like protect me and like it was just you know, I always recognized the brilliance in my friends and that was not recognized by the administration. Like it wasn't even a conversation. It was like they'll get to high school, you know, like and I mean the fact that it was tracked that way. I mean so overtly. And even now if you look at my yearbook pictures by class, you could see like there's a visual documentation of the expectations of our administration without question.
Wow. Wow. Well, we still have tracking today. We don't call it
Right.
that, but
Yeah.
we still do that.
The turtles and the
Um,
road runners or whatever, or the
right.
green
Yeah,
group
yeah,
and
yeah,
the
exactly.
right.
Yeah, red, yeah, I was gonna say green group or
Yeah.
red group, blue group. Right. Yeah, yeah. Okay, now let's move now to you are an
Okay.
educator or you're in education. What was your light bulb moment
Yeah.
when you really recognized like, whoa, there's some serious inequity going on here and I got to do something different?
Yeah. For Hunt, that this is very clear to me, and I feel like this moment was really important in terms of my future trajectory. So I mentioned earlier, I have a BFA in photography. I became a classroom teacher thinking I would teach art, but that's not real in New York City if you want to work with elementary school kids. And also just there weren't like positions. And my I met an administrator who said, I think you're a fourth grade teacher. Just promise me 1 year, give it a year. And he was 100% right. I'm a fourth grade teacher. To this day, I feel that in my heart. So my kids, I didn't really know what I was doing. I went back in New York. You have to have a master's, so I started my master's the same time as I entered my fourth grade classroom for the very first time, not knowing anything about education. New York City public schools provided me with 1 day of professional development. It was like how to set your desks up. So really not right. But just working with my students who were absolutely amazing. In fact, I'm still in touch with some of them from that very first class.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh man,
They're in their
that's great.
40s, right? Like it's insane. But yeah, they were amazing and the stuff that we did in our classroom in Brooklyn, I had in all of my years teaching in Brooklyn, I had like maybe, I don't know, 98% English learners, like a very high number of students from Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. And they were just doing the most amazing things and they could articulate their understanding in different ways and through drawing or acting out like performance or oral, using their oral skills. And then when the test scores came back, I could not believe how they performed on those assessments. I was just shocked because I was so proud of everything that they had learned, and they were proud of everything they learned. And then they came back with like this 25, 26 percentile score on these high stakes assessments that I didn't understand. This is my very first year teaching. Were
Right,
were
right.
not reflective of authentic learning. Were designed to segregate. They were
Yeah.
designed to, track students into certain economies and vocations and, life situations. And so I went to one of my professors and I was like, what happened? Like, what happened? What happened? And she started sharing some work with me. And I remember I was always really into reading and literacy. And she shared Rosenblatt with me. And,
Wow.
for the first time, I was like, oh, it's not about the text. In these high stakes assessments, they're thinking about the text. They're not thinking about the kid at all. And that was the first time where I was like, oh, it takes what the kid knows and the text together. Like it's more than that.
Right.
Because when I came
Right.
up through school, it was like, let's find out what author X meant. Like no one cared what I thought or what I brought to that experience. And so it was really
Right.
at that moment where I understood how the role of my students was not really acknowledged by the people making policy decisions and things, and how
Right.
I set out to provide them with multiple pathways to demonstrate what they know. And that's still really important to me, even at the college level. Like, you should
Right.
have multiple ways of expressing knowledge and also different ways of making sense of text, not answering questions at the end of a chapter, for example, which is the way
Right.
I was
Right.
brought up.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna ask you, going full circle as like, big time
Big
professor and
time.
researcher, how do you like, what you said about those high stakes tests, has that really changed, right?
No.
And no, it hasn't,
Mm-mm.
right? So it's up to people like you to kind of present a counter narrative
100%.
around, right? And
Yeah.
that's a form of advocacy. It's not just like research, literacy research.
Right.
It's also a form of
I
advocacy.
would say 2 points to that. One is, yeah, I'm all about the counter narrative. I mean, I think that's something that really drives me 100%. Like, I think if you look at my research, it's a lot about sharing counter narratives and kind of amplifying voices and things like that. But two, and this is where like my whiteness comes in handy, is I also know how to play the game. And so even as a fourth grade teacher, once I knew better, I would say, okay, you guys, remember, who's asking these questions? What's the best answer for the test? It still might not be the best answer in the world. And for sure, I did that as a teacher educator, my early years doing like literacy methods classes, and they had to take the RICA and other high stakes assessments for teacher accreditation. I would be like, you might not make this decision with your kid in a classroom, but think about what the best answer for the test would be. And
Right.
I mean, I think playing the game is part of the game. I wish it wasn't.
Part of the
I
game.
wish we didn't
Yeah.
have to be like that. But that,
Right.
you know, in order for you to help children, if you have to, play that game a little bit, I'm okay with that. As long as you know
Yeah.
you're playing the game. Don't conform to
Right.
do
Yeah.
it, but if you know that you're
Right.
making that decision to get ahead or whatever, then that's okay.
Right. 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 Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. I agree with you 100%. All right. Let's go to what I call the fun question, where you tell us about two of the rings of culture that we focus on in terms of our multiple identities that resonate with you, that speak loudly to you.
So definitely ethnicity. I mean, I'm like, if someone asked me about my positionality, even, my identity markers, the number one, the first thing I would say is Sicilian. I think like everything I do, from the way I walk in a room, where I choose to sit at a table, how I interact with other folks. Like, if you are another Sicilian, there's probably a different way. Not probably, there is a different way that I would interact with you. Especially, I think now it's interesting because Italy is going through this phase where like you're not Italian enough if you are X generations, and they've changed the laws about how you can get dual citizenship if you're not as close as you used to be. So it's
Yeah.
interesting within the Italian community to be hearing all of that, like, you know, you can't call yourself Italian just because it comes up in
Yeah.
your DNA or whatever. Like, it's so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that also, I think, influences the way that I teach and the way that I am in the academy, because like like Black folks, we overtalk. I often don't wait for someone to finish before I start my own. Like
Right.
I'm a jump in kind of gal. So
Right. Right.
in all of those ways, and I think I don't think geography is one of your rings of culture. So maybe it goes with Sicilian too, but definitely my New Yorkness, because it allows me to be outspoken. So I've been in California now longer, half my life than as a, but I still will say, like, I use it as an excuse to be outspoken. Well, I'm a New Yorker. Like, I can say what I think. And, when we talk about situational appropriateness, like that geography plays into it. So actually, I guess when I think about this now more, Shiraki, maybe it's socioeconomic, because I am a New Yorker, but I'm a certain kind of New Yorker. Like I'm a certain, first gen immigrant economic, I'm not, and also I'm from Long Island. And so when I say I'm from Long Island, people are like, think, rich Long Island, like a certain kind of 5 towns you know what I mean? And that is definitely
Right.
not where
Right.
I grew up, so
Right. 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 Right.
yeah.
Yeah. No, geography is definitely a ring. We don't highlight
Mm-hmm.
it like in the main 7, but location is, culture.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely, definitely, definitely. Yeah, and then the socioeconomic, and what's interesting about it, they all kind of intersect
Agreed.
at some point,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to me, that's the fascinating thing about it and what keeps it dynamic, which has kept me engaged for so long because you meet people and you realize all these
Yes,
intersections.
that's the exact thing. The intersectional work. Yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
can't really pull out my New Yorkness from my Sicilianness.
Right, right, right. Exactly.
This episode of Outrageous Love the Podcast is brought to you by CAT, Culturally Authentic Texts. A culturally authentic text, or CAT, is a piece of fiction or non that illuminates the authentic cultural experiences of a particular cultural group by centering voices, experiences, and perspectives directly from within the culture being represented, be it religion, socioeconomic status, gender, ethnicity, nationality, orientation, or geographic location. The language, situations, and illustrations must depict culture in an authentic manner as well. Texts like Once in a Blue Moon by Sharon G. Flake and Shift Happens by J. Albert Mann. For more examples of cats, check out our Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube pages at Validate Affirm.
Let's talk about situational appropriateness, or we could say a cultural or linguistic adaptation. Because one of the things that I thought about that you didn't necessarily mention explicitly was, do you speak Italian?
Um, Not great. I mean, I was in Italy in the fall, and a lot of times Italians would respond in Spanish to me because I put the accent like on the wrong place. And then
Right,
also
right.
there's definitely like a Sicilian dialect. So like I'll give you an example. My mother's 91. Until this day, if she, calls me to say goodnight or sends me a text, she says, sta bene diga. That's not Italian. That's Sicilian. Like, and in Italian,
Mm,
you would say like benedita, like a benediction. It's like saying a prayer, like a blessing to go to sleep. But the language is very specifically Sicilian, like not Italian. Like you couldn't Google it; it wouldn't show you.
come on.
So
Right.
so, but Sicilians are really nice to me, compared to like Northern Italians, because even if they don't understand with my accent, my last name Cappello, and from my mother's maiden name was Vivona, they're very Sicilian. Like they know you're Sicilian from that. And even sometimes people are like, "Oh, she looks Sicilian." I don't see that, but as a people, they're so, at least to me, so welcoming. So like come into our family, like come. So, yeah, my language is embedded with command words and like Sicilian phrases and songs of my childhood. There are a lot of Italian like nursery rhymes and things that,
Right.
yeah,
Right. Well, we're going back a little bit,
that's
but
okay.
is that because there is this notion of like we're not going to speak
Yes,
Italian so that we can quote unquote assimilate?
explicitly so.
Yeah. Okay.
Explicitly so in my home. My grandfather's
All
like,
right.
nope. And my grandfather didn't speak very much English, but he would not. Nope. You have to. It was definitely the
No.
melting pot era. Like we can.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, it was explicit. She's gonna get confused in school, or she'll be like,
Right.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So now I'll go back to the original
Hmm.
question. Situational appropriateness. Give us a situation
Hmm.
when you had to culturally and or linguistically adapt. Were you successful or not?
Yeah, so I've learned a lot, and you've known me all of these years. So I would say with age, I've softened. So when I was thinking about this, I thought my very first faculty meeting when I got on the tenure track, my very first one, the director of my department, it was a large department then, handed out the all the literacy faculty students' RICA scores. Like you taught, literacy methods to the entire group. And I
Mhm.
was not subtle at all. I said, are you doing this? Like to my director,
Right.
no filter, none. And I do think that
Right.
that's cultural as well. Like we just say what we need to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
and
Totally.
I was like, wait, is this like me when I was a fourth grade teacher being judged against my other fourth? And I didn't even have test scores. It was my first semester. I didn't even have students, so it wasn't my scores that were being looked at. And
Right.
I'm like, is this really what you're doing? I said, well, maybe I chose the wrong profession. I said that at my very first faculty
Oh,
meet.
whoa.
And then someone like pulled me aside and was like, yeah, maybe you can think those things, but maybe you should say it a little differently and in these settings. And so I started using my observation tools to see how people behave and how and it's not been easy for me. I mean, another time at the academy, um, there was like a kind of a grievance, not really, but a different director gave a class to someone else, and I was by far the most qualified and like had done trainer of trainers kind of professional development around it, and she gave it to a lecturer, and I was like, wait, like what? And so she wouldn't talk to me about it in private. So in our public meeting, I was like, could you just tell us about how you make these decisions about how you're assigning classes? And she stopped talking to me after that. We never talked
Oh
again.
no.
She had been
Right.
in my
Right. Right.
home and everything. But like it's a fair
Oh
question.
wow.
Like you should,
Yeah.
yeah. No, she had been in my home. Like it was, yeah. But and like don't take it
You're
personal. Like how do you not take it personal?
How do you not take it
It's all
personal? Right.
personal.
You're reminding me of why I left the
You're
academy
sorry.
because I couldn't stomach the level of indirectness that was needed to,
Yeah.
like as you've been saying, play the game. I
Hmm.
mean, especially around blatant, obvious, like the examples you're giving,
Hmm.
right? And you were expected not to say anything.
You are
Like
expected not to
that,
say
that
anything.
was the expectation.
Hmm. Yeah.
And those were like cringe-worthy faculty meetings for me.
Oh, it
Like I'm
gets
like,
so much worse. I mean, that was like, I mean, one time I was on Senate, which, by the way, for people not in the academy, is the absolute worst service thing you could ever do. Like, that is hell. And at SDSU, we have our mascot was Monty Montezuma. Like, it's where,
mm,
and,
yeah, yeah.
the old white men in Senate saying like, "Well, it doesn't bother me." Like, dude, you don't get a say in this. Like, what? Like,
Right, right.
like what? No one cares if it bothers you or not. Like,
Right, right,
it,
right, right, right.
those moments
Yeah,
are very challenging, very challenging.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
wouldn't say that I'm great at it, but I'm best at it when I'm trying to help my students. That's when I'm best at it, when I can keep my mouth closed and then like leverage it later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It seems like, yeah, I wonder, you kind of alluded to this earlier. Do you get a pass because you can be a little more outspoken
Hmm.
because of the racial
That is
part
such a good
versus,
question. Yeah.
right? Versus like if I were to come
No.
in and I were basically saying the exact same
Yep.
thing you were saying, but it would be read in a totally different
Yeah,
way.
I definitely agree with that. And I would even say like, well, I'm from New York. I can say this or like
Right. We can
yeah,
blame the
right.
location.
Well, and
Yeah, yeah,
because I'm white, I can in certain rooms, I can, you know, yeah, 100%.
yeah,
That
yeah.
there's no question of the overtness around that, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about it this way, but another way to have this conversation is really around, to what extent can you be your authentic self
Mm.
in your professional setting?
So before
And
tenure,
I
not
would
at
say
all.
not at all.
Mm-mm. But after tenure, life is different. And I know that that's a bit cliche, but I think, it's
Yeah, it is.
absolutely true. Like
Right.
the more senior I get, the more authentically myself. And in so many ways, like I even studied things I didn't care that much about before I got tenure to get the pubs, to get what I needed and then once I got that, I mean, everything changed. My work became so much more important to me. I was so much more motivated. I advocate in a way that I didn't feel comfortable doing before. The kinds of journals that I publish in, like everything changes in the academy once you get tenure. At least that's been my experience in the years that I've been on this track.
Now, let's talk about, where do you go? I call it the well. What's in the well to refuel, to refill, to keep yourself inspired, to keep yourself charged up in the art world or family, friends? Where do you go to refuel?
Yeah.
What's your well?
So, if we were having this conversation a year ago, I don't even know how I would have answered that because I definitely had that like second shift identity. I would come home from work and like do more work, and uh, but now I was on sabbatical last semester and I have rediscovered like working with my hands and how much that matters to me. I actually I'm going to pick two things. One is my students. So as I get closer to retirement, I I feel like I I'm leaving the academy and my specific field of like critical multimodal work in really good hands. I just got back from ARA, our largest research conference, and
Yeah.
watching my students enact and take on these roles, as newly minted professors. I was with four students who have all come through my program and all used critical multimodal methods in their dissertation, and watching them present on it and them becoming mentors as well. And it's really fills me up. It makes me feel like I did my job. I can retire feeling good about that. Like
Awesome.
it feels amazing. And even yeah, so that's a professional response. The other one would be like I told you I have a BFA, always loved the arts. It's been a really long time since I've been able to like make art, and I've been doing that since sabbatical. So I even if I have to schedule it into my calendar, and I try really hard not to open my computer after dinner, although sometimes I still do. But I've been doing embroidery on photographs, like stitching. So, like using the actual repetitive motion, my hands making a difference into the text, the visual text, like that's been really wonderful. I'm in the middle of something, a 30-day self challenge called Making Waves. So there's the metaphorically, I make waves in my work, in my academy,
Right.
but I'm also like thinking about how sometimes and visualizing, sometimes I can ride the wave and it might be rough, and sometimes it's super smooth and it brings me to the shore. Sometimes I have to hold my breath because the water is keeping me down. And so I've been using all different kinds of media and just doing 30 days of making waves. And so being able to create again has been so powerful. And it's one of the reasons I'm looking forward to retirement. It's not because I hate my job. I love my job. My students are amazing, but I do want to make stuff again. I do.
Right, right. To be honest with you, I don't see you like totally
Yeah.
retiring. I think there's gonna be
Yeah.
something you're gonna stay connected with. I don't know what it's gonna be.
Yeah. My center probably.
Advising, teaching,
Yeah.
or presenting. I don't know. I know that the people that we look up to, they never really retired,
Right.
right? Like I got to see Gloria Lansing Billings last year. She's still on the go.
So
She's still.
at ARA, they had a session called the Tiny Desk Concert. And it was
Oh, nice.
Tyrone Howard like DJing, and Gloria Ladson Billings was there. It was like an amazing session, right? I think it'll be
Yeah,
online recorded. So yeah, they're still for sure still at it.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, I just want to thank you, my forever friend,
My forever
friend
friend.
for life.
Yes. We could not,
And
nothing could change that. We're so
no,
connected. We've
nothing can
been
change that.
through it from, man, those conversations. I still think of them as like really important. And you made a really big difference in my life, Shiraki.
Likewise, likewise, 100%. I really appreciate you doing this, and thank you for sharing your Sicilian life with us.
Uh-huh.
And I look forward to another, 40 years
Yeah. I
or
don't want to be that
somewhere,
old, but
somewhere around
yeah.
there. Right? I'll take that back. I'll take that
Okay.
back.
Whatever we have left, we'll make the most of it.
All right. There you go, folks. That was Marva. That was a fascinating conversation. The thing I love about the podcast, folks, over the 7 years is that I learned things about people even though I've been knowing them for a long time, I still learn new stuff. And we've talked about Marva and being Sicilian for many times. But just to put it in the context of Don't Call Me White, it just kind of added another layer to our conversation. And I like her thoughtfulness and her insight. She really, in my opinion, gets it in terms of her privilege and her privilege racially, and how she gets to kind of navigate it in a way that people of color can't navigate. I think you heard that best when she spoke about how she's able to advocate in some circles and some contexts, that if I were saying the same exact thing that she was saying, it would be looked at in a totally different way. And we all know that that's fact. That's 100%. And that's why we need allies, right? In the work, which is, I guess, could be a whole nother theme for a podcast, like who are our allies. But it's one thing to have an ally who feels like they're doing you a favor, versus having an ally who gets it, who really gets the notion of the advocacy and pushes the system, if you will, in that way. And I really appreciate Marva. She's been consistent with that all throughout our friendship, all throughout our interactions. Another thing I want to tell you about Marva, which is very interesting, which I meant to put on the intro, is Marva always wears black. Okay, now I've been knowing her for almost 30 years. I've never seen her not wearing black. Whatever it is, it could be different outfits and stuff, but they're always black. Okay, and so her I've never seen her closet, but I'm sure her closet is just like all these black things, right? Dresses, pantsuits, outfits, just all kind of stuff. That's another unique thing about her. You can spot her a mile away. Like if you're looking for her in the crowd, just look for somebody wearing all black. Oh, there she is right there. So you know, this topic, some people find, a little bit uncomfortable, because I think it's hard to admit that you have a certain privilege that you can access, right? And I want to liken it. I think men have a gender privilege that we don't talk about, that as men we can access. And I would liken that, right? And it's a very uncomfortable feeling when you feel like you can kind of pull your man card or pull your Caucasian card, right? And so what I want to leave you with is what I like to ask people is what privilege do you access? And I'm not talking about just race, right? I just gave you an example of gender, but there may be an economic privilege that you access. Like if you're even if you're middle class or higher, you have an economic privilege that you can access, right? And so I'm trying to get that to create empathy so that we don't look at it in terms of the racial part only. If you are an abled person, you have a privilege that you can access that people who are disabled can't access. So I'm trying to bring the universality of this because I think that it allows for inclusivity. But our society has only locked in on one type of privilege, and that's the racial privilege. And I think that we can learn by looking at our own privileges and how we access them so that we can better approach how we deal with race. And that's how I'm trying to enlighten. So with that said, thank you for witnessing our first video episode, and whatever we did wrong, we'll get it right as we do this more frequently. And as I always say at the end, thank you to my editor, A-Team. It's just me and Andrew, but I appreciate him so much. And I appreciate you. So stay fabulous, stay safe, and go show some outrageous love.
Outrageous Love, the podcast, is edited, produced, and includes original music by me, Andrew Hawheim, in association with Dr. Shiraki Holly and the Center for Culturally Responsive Teaching and Learning. If you have questions about our services, curriculum, or want to know more about how to bring outrageous love and cultural responsiveness to your area, visit www.culturallyresponsive.org to learn more. And please rate, review, and subscribe to Outrageous Love, the podcast.